We're gonna make it to the church on time. We're gonna make it to the church on time. Put on your Sunday best. I'll put on mine.
Good evening and welcome to Trinity's Studio 440 here at the Gettysburg Outlets in Pennsylvania. We are delighted to be here today on Veterans Day, where we pause to give thanks for our service men and women that have given and sacrificed their time and sometimes, and in some cases, their lives for the freedoms that we enjoy this day. We also want to take time to pray for all those that are serving today around the world, both in our country and fighting for others, for God's people all around the world. We ask for God's protection, and we give God thanks for their service. It has been a great week in terms of celebrations. This past Sunday at Trinity, we were able to honor our veterans that from our local church, and I think it's amazing how many that we have standing up year after year in our congregation. We have men and women that have served in various branches of the armed services, and this year we heard from them, and they led us in our opening hymn, the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And it was great to hear their stories. I think Gene, who's here tonight, served our country, and he actually introduced himself first this year, and he started something. He told a little bit about his service and what was interesting, or something interesting about his service. And that got all the men and women started. And our last one was probably our oldest one, Earl. Earl Rice served in World War II, and he told a story that has stuck with me ever since Sunday. And what he said was that when he flew over Japan, a couple days, I think it was, after we dropped the bombs on Japan that virtually ended the war, he described looking down through, I guess, a bomb door or glass, but he looked down through the airplane, and what he saw at first glance, what he thought he saw was, wow, the Japanese have cleaned up everything. They really quickly have cleaned up all the mess. And then it didn't take him long to figure out that that's not what he was seeing at all, but what he saw was total and utter destruction. And I think he told that story a lot better than what I just did, because he was there and he actually teared up. But it really struck me of the impact of those bombs and certainly what it meant for the world, and it ended that world war, but also what the impact it had on Japan and the people that suffered from that. And then last but not least, the servicemen who witnessed it, both dropping the bomb and then the aftermath, and what a lasting impact that's been on Earl and other men who fought in that war. But it got me to thinking for this week and for this night, this day of Veterans Day, I wonder what God sees when He looks down on our earth. And I even thought about it a step further. I have an iPad here with me tonight, but you can do this on your computer. There's a program by Google. It's called Google Earth. And on the iPad, I'm sure you can't really see it, but Google Earth gives you the opportunity to get a satellite view of anywhere in the world. And so we're like, look, I'm actually looking at Baltimore here. I know Gene is a Baltimore Raven fan. And so I have Raven Stadium here and Camden Yards up front there, or up top, excuse me. And so I wonder if God had a Google app and He was just looking down, at first glance, what would He see? And what would God see as He looked down, through the clouds or using this Google app? And in this case, I have it focused. I'll try to hold it still for a second. I have it focused in on the Inner Harbor area. Again, M&T Bank Stadium, I believe it is, in Camden Yards. And so at first glance, if God didn't know anything, which we know is a lie, God knows it all. But if God didn't know what was going on down here, and He just looked up on Google Earth and found this picture, this satellite view of Baltimore, God would say, wow, everything's pretty good. It looks great, and they've made some progress, and everything is in really good shape. That's a beautiful part of Baltimore. We spend time there at least once a year. Jean, Fran, and I. But it truly is a beautiful part of our country and of the city, and all the water coming together there in the harbor, and there's a lot of money invested down in the inner harbor, and so it's just nice. So if at first glance God would say, "Wow, that's great," but then if you would just scroll, that's the good thing about the app here and the iPhone app. If you just scroll a little bit, and I think if you were walking away from the stadiums, you'd be going west towards us here in this part of the country. You don't have to walk very far, and then you're into extreme poverty. And so if God looked at that part, and it's west of, in this case it happens to be Martin Luther King Boulevard, God wouldn't see the beauty of what he saw in terms of economics. Now, he'd see some beautiful people, I'm sure, but what he would see economically would be maybe more like what Earl saw, utter destruction. And I'm not exactly sure if taking the Google Earth app process and looking and getting a snapshot of an area, or even if we could look down like Earl looked through the plane, or if we could look down from heaven like God does, I'm not sure that's the best way to view what's going on here. I think the Apostle Paul has a better feel for getting a sense of how things are going.